Hey everybody, good afternoon. Welcome to the Lunchtime Devo with Bo-O. Lunchtime, get that? No morning, lunchtime. That's right, Lunchtime Devo with Bo-O. And hope you're doing good today. And I'm at work, so yeah, it's kind of busy. We got a wonderful group of children here for VBS at Calvary Christian Fellowship, so that's super cool. It's great to see all the kids here. And glad you guys could be with me today on the devotion. It's a little late going, but you know, sometimes we have to do the lunchtime Devo instead of the morning, so we got to be a little flexible. So we're going to be in Job chapter 3 today. You could always check out the archives at my YouTube channel, which is just Bo Willett, and it's simply just my name. It's right there, over there, Ouellettee. You could check out the archives. So let's get into Job chapter 3. I've gone through a lot of the Bible already, and now I'm in the book of Job, and I love it. It's kind of a wonderful mixture of kind of this poetic kind of Hebrew language kind of flow, kind of style, you could say. And yet we have this incredible backstory to the book at the beginning that really blows our mind. It's quite interesting, this whole thing with God and this council and Satan and very interesting for sure, and something that we had a good time kind of going over in the Devos about how maybe that applies to our life, how we could think about that in our day-to-day life. So let's get into Job chapter 3, kind of check it out, and go from there. So Job chapter 3, it says, "At last Job spoke." This is after a week of mourning. You know, it's okay to mourn and it's okay to feel sad. I know I've experienced a lot of loss recently, so I've always been a very kind of jovial kind of person, upbeat and very positive. And then when you lose someone though, and then you lose another person, and then another person, and another person. Sometimes when you have a lot of deaths in a period of a short period of time, it could really weigh on your heart, and it's okay to grieve. And here Job is in mourning, and of course he's mourning longer than a week. But after a week, it says he finally spoke. And notice what he says. He says he cursed the day of his birth. Interesting, right? Man, curse the day I was born. Let that day of my birth be erased, and the night I was conceived. Things that should be pleasurable, right? Meaning the joyful, let it be erased. That night I was conceived. You think of conceiving a child, you think of kind of a fun time, right? And Job says, man, curse that night I was even conceived. That's how sad and depressed he is. And have you ever been so depressed where you wish you never even would have been alive, been born in a sense to feel what you're feeling now? It's a real human experience. And just like when we went through Ecclesiastes in our devotion, it's a really real book with a lot of real questions. This book has a lot of really real feelings too. What I mean by real is just human feelings in them. Gosh, I'm so bummed that I almost wish I never would have been born before. Yeah, that happens. It says, "Let that day be turned into darkness, let it be loss even to God on high, and let no light shine on it." Gosh, the remembrance of my birth to be forgotten, right? Totally erased, totally gone. It says, "Let the darkness and utter gloom claim that day for its own." Now, this is very poetic. The darkness of utter gloom claim that day. That day is for its own, that day of my birth, right? Let a black cloud overshadow it, and let that darkness terrify it. Let that night be blotted off the calendar, never again to be counted among the days of the year. That night I was conceived, yeah, maybe it was a great night. You're on a date night, that kind of thing. You're hanging out. It's your wedding night, whatever it is. Let it not even be remembered. That's how bad I feel right now. I mean, the way Job describes, sadness, and it's even deeper than sadness, right? The grief is very awesome, I must say, because a lot of times we can't even say words to express how depressed we are, how bummed we are. We can't quite articulate that, but poetry is a beautiful way of writing, a style that really is able to capture things, allegorically, through the styles of poetry that maybe we just can't seem to express in a kind of logical way, just person to person. And Job is really getting down to the depths of it, right? Darkness, black clouds, darkness again. Now, verse 6, it says, let that night be blotted, right? Everything's about darkness, blotted. Never again that month of my conception should even be remembered. Nothing. It says, let night be childless. Let that night be childless. Let it have no joy. Again, a lack of joy, darkness. Let those who are experts at cursing, whose cursing could rouse Leviathan, curse that day. Let its morning stars remain dark. Let it hope for light, but in vain may it never see the morning light. Curse that day for failing to shut my mother's womb, for letting me be born to see all this trouble. Why wasn't I born dead? So he now gets into this question. Why wasn't I born dead? Why didn't I die as I came from the womb? So he doesn't curse God. He just starts going over the night he was conceived, the night he was born, and he just goes into it. It's dark. It's gloom. It's the worst. Look at what I have to go through now. And sometimes our experiences are so tough. They're so tough that we can wish what Job's thinking of right now. How many people in our world are depressed? How many people go through extreme grief like this? So many. Why do we go to the bottle? Why do we go to drugs? Why do we go to, sex and different things, in a more impulsive way? And there's many other things. Why do we cave into our fear so much? Why do we have so many resentments? So many times we just don't know how to deal with things properly. We find a lack of contentment, so much discontentment in our life. Just not at peace, not at rest. It's hard for us to rest. We don't want to think. And so we keep our minds busy with movies and songs and this and that, and you could see where Job is trying to deal with his reality. And you know what he does? He writes some really cool lyrics, I must say. And so he says, why wasn't I born dead? Why didn't I die as I came from the womb? Why was I laid on my mother's lap? Why did she nurse me at her breast? Had I died at birth, I would now be at peace. I would be asleep and at rest. I would rest with the world's kings and prime ministers, whose great buildings now lie in ruins, right? Hey, all those people that were great, they're all dead, right? Why couldn't I just be with them, right? Why did I have to go through this? That's another thought I think us humans have. Like, before I die, it'd be cool to be able to go through or not go through the hardships that I need to go through. So sometimes when we're in our life, like, instead of going through hardship, we would rather just die and just be deceased instead of go through the difficulties that we have to go through. And many of us are like that, especially when it comes, I think, to the time of our death. When we're going to die, a lot of times we want to die before we actually die because it's so trying, it's so difficult, it's so hard, right? To go through that time of dying, everything going away, our bodies failing, everything happening. But this is kind of what Job feels in his life. And this is what we will feel too at some point in our life as well. Why couldn't I just be that? Why can't I just die before I had to go through all this stuff? He says, why wasn't I buried like a stillborn child, like a baby who never lives to see the light? For in death the wicked cause no trouble, and the weary are at rest. Even captives are at ease in death, with no guards to curse them. Rich and poor are both there, and the slave is free from his master. Oh, why give light to those in ministry, and life or misery and life to those who are bitter? It feels bitter to be depressed, right? You get into bitterness, and when you get into bitterness, you can develop some really strong resentments as well. God help us not to develop bitterness. That's a big thing in the New Testament, right? Don't let a root of bitterness take place, where we can start getting bitter towards people. Sour. When you think of someone, you get sour. You think of all their stuff and you critique them all the time, and you can't see anything through a positive light anymore, and everything's through a negative light. You always have something of, why didn't they do this in the past? Why didn't they do that in the past? You become bitter, resentful, and that person's probably living in your brain for forever now. And and the thing is we got to take that resentment and we got to say, hey, God, you're able to judge these people. Why can't I just live day to day in my life right now? Why can I not be content right now? Help me, Lord, to bring this person to you, and that you're able to deal with this person far more better than I can. Instead of develop that root of bitterness that just keeps coming down and down, right? The more you go, it just keeps getting deeper and deeper, because you keep looking at them through that negative lens. You don't see the positive. You always see the negative, right? It's all about you, right? They didn't do what you wanted them to do. You want them to do more things that you want to do. You want them to do. They never do enough. They can never do enough. Even if they did something that you would like, it's probably still not going to make up for all that stuff that they did back then, right? And so you're kind of stuck because you can't go back, and they can't go back and deal with it. It's like, how are they going to deal with it now? How do you want them to deal with it now? And if they don't deal with it the way you want them to deal with it, you're just never going to be satisfied. And that's a bummer. So that bitterness, right, gets in there, which is no good. It says that, let's see, where are we at? Let's go to verse 20. Oh, why give light to those in misery? Yeah, we read that. And life to those who are bitter. They long for death and it won't come. They search for death more eagerly than for hidden treasure. Wow, that's interesting. More than hidden treasure, they seek for death. It's kind of interesting, because we should seek for hidden treasure in the New Testament, the idea of the kingdom of God. We should seek for that hidden treasure, right? The treasure of Jesus. But here it says, the search for death more eagerly than hidden treasure. Oh man, you're in such misery that you just want to die. The dying seems like the best thing. And that's how it is with a lot of people. Dying seems like the best way to deal with the problem, is just to be done with it. That's a true ism for us human beings. They filled with joy when they finally die. They're filled with joy when they finally die. They rejoice when they find the grave. Why is life given to those with no future, whose God has surrounded with difficulties? Why is life given to those who seem like they're just stuck? What's the point? And this is it. It's like, philosophically, we have kind of a decision to make. Is it worth living when it seems like the chips are down? Is it worth living? Why do we continue to live when someone can't talk, or someone can't do this or do that, or someone's, has a disability, or someone this or that, or you're depressed or you're bummed? It doesn't seem good, right? It seems like it would be better if they were not here. That's the grief Job is feeling, and the philosophical thought that he has in his mind. And this is something that has permeated our culture as well. Are there people that really, because maybe they can't contribute to society very well economically, maybe they're not supposed to be living? There's thoughts like that. If someone wants to die because their life's tough, should we just let them off themselves? Is that ethical? To let people take their own life when things don't look good? Another way to look at it is God, again, worthy of our a worthy object of our worship, even when times are tough? Could something even be valuable, even in the midst of suffering? Is there some kind of value to our lives, even when we suffer or we're in incredible trial? Is that something that could be? Is there a value to our life even in suffering? And these are the big questions Job asks. And the thing is Jesus tells us that there is purpose, there is value in suffering. He suffered, right? And he suffered for us. And his suffering produced something. It produced its salvation. And it produced, ultimately, showing the value of the Father, the worthiness of the Father, that God is worthy to be worshipped no matter what. Remember when Satan tempted Jesus, kind of thing? Like, hey, you know what? You could just serve me, man. I'll get you out of this trouble. How many of us would just cave in and just go, yeah, absolutely, I'll serve you. I'll just get out of this trial that I'm in right now. I'll take the pill, to get out of it. But Jesus said, no, serve God only. There is a value in the suffering that we go through, that we, in a sense, we shine God, we glorify God, we value God through his plan for us, not opting for that, in a sense, satanic way out of like, oh, okay, I'm going to take what you want, the bait that you want, Satan, and I'm going to start worshiping you. And the idea is this. It's that when we suffer, we don't want to throw off Christ. We don't want to take a bait. The bait is to throw off God. Now, how many of us have done that? You suffer, you don't think that it's justified, and you don't know why God's got you doing it. You wish that God would just take you out, just die, right? You wish you would never have been born. And the bait is always, are you gonna, you can throw off God. You'll feel better if you just throw off Jesus. Just say no. Just say, you know what? There's no God. Forget it. Forget God. That kind of thing. That's the bait that usually we go down as humans. And how many of us humans have gone down that road? So many. That's right. And so he ends this chapter, or we end the chapter by this. He says, I cannot eat for sighing. My groans pour out like water. 1 week, just absolutely sad, crying over and over, grief beyond belief. What I always feared has happened to me. What I dreaded has come true. I have no peace, no quietness. I have no rest. Only trouble comes. No peace, no rest. And this would be true in our case too if we didn't have Messiah, if we didn't have Jesus. That's where we can find our peace. That's where we can find our rest. Both those things are talked about in the New Testament, by the way, that we can find rest in Hebrews chapter 4, and Jesus is our peace in the book of Ephesians. We see both those things that we have in the work of Jesus for us. That we have peace, that death has been conquered, that there is life after death, and that after we die, we will be in the presence of God, and there will be a bodily resurrection where we will be able to live in our bodies again in a perfect way, and in a complete way, in a mature way, I should say. And we will have total peace meaning there won't be that uneasiness. There won't be certainly that depression and that grief that we have experienced in this body, just as the body falls apart and in a sense goes astray. And so, man, Job, we really see that, gosh, in our Devo, that, having grief is really a real thing. And it really has an emotional toll, a physical toll, a mental toll on our life, even the way we think, our philosophy. And there's really a lot of temptation in grief too. Temptation to push off God and the things of God and kind of isolate ourselves, get alone. He's alone for a week, of course. His friends finally get to him. And we're going to see how that goes tomorrow. So, hey, you guys enjoy your lunch and enjoy your day. Thanks so much for joining me on the Devo. You guys take care. Bye-bye.